Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing our third grade art club. Okay, there you are. All right, so we're going to be having two different options. We're going to have the phoenix and then we're also going to have the unicorn. And then at the end, throughout this project, we're going to make it glow in the dark. Now, these are mythical creatures. There are thousands of mythical creatures and cultures around the world, each with different names. As a general category, they're usually supernatural beings, legendary creatures, or even called monsters at some point. Okay, here we have our value scales, and in class we have talked about value, and it is defined as how light or dark a given color can be. Now, the way we achieve the value scales is different depending on the medium. We are going to be working with watercolor, and the amount of water versus the pigment is what's going to give us that difference between watercolor being really dark or the watercolor being very light. And in a little bit, we're going to be looking at the different watercolor techniques. All right, so here we have the watercolor techniques. The very first one that we're going to be using is this one here called wet on wet. And basically, you're going to be brushing your paper with water first. And that is how we are going to be achieving the very light value. Now, let's look at materials. This is the spot where we're going to be pausing the video so that you can get all the materials that you need. But first, there are some materials that you are going to share with the partner. These materials are going to be the watercolor pan, the paper, and you are going to have your own brush and your own watercolor paper. So pause this video so that you can see everything that we need. All right, so before we start, okay, I want to show you here, okay, on this side, I have my watercolor paper underneath. And then on top of that watercolor paper, I have my black carbon copy paper. Now, the shiny part of the carbon paper goes down facing the watercolor paper. And then on top, you're going to put your copy paper, whether it's the phoenix or whether you choose the unicorn. Once you're done tracing it, you should on there. If you choose a unicorn, you're going to follow the same steps. You can use a paper copy there that you have. You should have that available. Before we move on to our wet on wet technique, please make sure that your image has completely transferred. Now that you've had your image transferred, the first technique we're going to talk about is wet on wet. Basically, you're going to dilute the color by basically painting with water on your paper. Notice how when you just add a little bit of dot to the water, it expands. This kind of reminds me of like fireworks or like miniature tie-dye. I personally like it, but there's some people that don't like that and then they want to blend it. So if you don't like it, you want to blend it, go on ahead and start blending it with your brush and then bring the water and the pigment down the way I'm doing right now. Make sure you keep on adding water. Now, do you have to do it red? No. You can do it blue. You can do the background yellow. This is your work. I am just modeling for you, and you're just watching just to give you an idea but overall, this is your work. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. And doesn't seem that I can. Let me see. All right, so now I have moved on to the hair. And again, I'm just doing a very light wash first because what's going to happen later is that it's going to dry and then you're going to add details. And if it starts bending, just use your hand to straighten it out while you're painting. The one thing I don't want to get is the horn because that one I'm going to be making it yellow. Now, if you want to make it a dark color, then it wouldn't matter. But always remember that in watercolor, uh, you can't go on top with yellow because it's very transparent. So we usually always try to know where our light values are. So that would be like our yellows or really white places. That way we do not paint over those areas. All right, I'm just adding a little bit of pink on the cheek. Now, if you're doing the phoenix, you're doing the exact same thing. So for the background, I added a little bit of water on the top and then I added blue. So it's a very light blue wash. But now I added very light yellows. And this is the part where I'm adding more detail, but it has to be semi-dry because if you add it and it's wet, it's going to expand like a firework, like a tie-dye. And if you don't want that look, then you have to wait for it to dry or have to wait for next time. I'm trying very careful to kind of outline. You don't have to. Now I'm adding some red. And this is the part where if you wanted to, you can blend with water in your brush. All right, you kind of get the idea. So once it's semi-dry, you can go with the dry on dry technique, which means that your paper is mostly dry and that your pigment on the brush is mostly dry. Okay. And then this way you can add details, which is what I'm doing. Continue doing that. And then once you are ready, make sure you have your name somewhere. And next time you come, we'll be doing the glow in the dark work. All right, so right now I'm just adding more detail. This is a great place to stop for day one. And if those of you did not get this far, it's okay. Next time you come in, your paper will be completely 100% dry and you'll be able to add these details. Don't forget with a small brush, write your name somewhere. Or it could be with pencil, but I'm going to be using a small brush. And those of you who are wondering, my name is Rosalba, which is what I'm writing. All right, guys, this is a great time to stop. We will see you next time for day 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2. This is where you're going to finish giving those really neat lines with your dry on dry or dry on wet techniques. And those of you who are ready for this, let's just talk about what glow in the dark is. So, glow in the dark just means it's luminous paint or paint that glows in the dark because it contains a phosphor or a substance that emits or creates, gives light off of a certain length or time after it has exposure to energy, such as ultraviolet radiation, which is why if you grab something that's glow in the dark and you put it out in the sun or you put it, under a UV light and then you go in a dark place, it's it really glows, but then it only lasts for a little bit. Okay, so it does need to be exposed to some source of energy, which would be like the sun, hence the ultraviolet radiation, right? Or that similar energy is given by the glow lights, which is what we will have at our exhibit. All right, let's talk about in the wild. Okay, the firefly squid produces a blue light that scientists believe may be used for communication, camouflage, or attracting food. Okay, so these animals naturally have this adaptation. The anglerfish, oh, he looks kind of scary, is a bony fish named for their characteristic mode of predation or eating animals, in which a modified luminescent fin ray acts as a lure for other fish. Okay, so basically, this fish lives in a really dark place in the ocean. Not a lot of people can go down there because of the water pressure. Okay, this is where anglerfish live, complete total darkness. And if you've ever seen Finding Nemo, okay, the anglerfish is the one that like eats her and she's like holding on to the angler, right? And she's like, "Ooh, it's a light." Okay? So that's what it means when it says the characteristic mode of predation. Okay? He's a predator, okay? And he is attracting his prey with that little luminous light. That is how he gets food, basically. Let's look at, the jellyfish. The humble jellyfish, okay, is perhaps the most bioluminescent animal on the planet. It is estimated that about half of the 2,000 or so known species, they exhibit some kind of glowing ability, and the most common use of light in jellyfish is to escape from predators. Huh. So the anglerfish attracts and the jellyfish escapes from predators. Very interesting how they're being used. Um, so cool. So, anyway, moving on. Whoa. I'm going to pause it here real quick. What are you going to need? Well, you are going to need your paper, your highlighters, you're going to need a brush, and you are going to need a few colors of glow in the dark.